Welcome to Curious Life of a Childfree Woman, a podcast celebrating unconventional choices and asking curious questions through the lens of a happy, child-free life. Every week, I chat with experts on today's most interesting topics, inspiring us to think differently, live intentionally, and find fulfillment on our terms. Whether you're child-free or seeking a space where parenthood isn't part of the conversation, you are welcome here. It's not about comparison, it's about possibility. Let's get curious together. A lot of us are here because we are interested in living life our way, and today's guest designs interiors for those allergic to the ordinary. I'm going to say that line again, allergic to the ordinary. I love that. And whether you think you care about decorating or interior design or not, I think we're going to learn a lot about how we can align the spaces we spend the most time in with the way we want to see ourselves. Interior design is something I am fascinated by. I have been rearranging furniture and accessories and obsessing over everything being in its place for as long as I can remember. But I've never thought about why my environment means so much to me until I met Jamie Gasparovic. Jamie is the founder of Studio Gaspo, an identity-driven interior design firm known for turning luxury homes into bold, unapologetic reflections of her clients' ambition, desires, personality, and values, supporting those of us who are allergic to the ordinary with incredible living spaces. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you.
Thank you for coming. I'm so happy you're here. Okay, so some people probably see the title of this episode and get really excited, and other people probably see it and think, I don't know how much I care about interior design, and I definitely don't think I'm good at interior design. But I want to set the tone right now. This is not just for people who enjoy Pinterest and home decor. In reality, the environment we live in actually affects us a lot and has a big impact on our emotions and our energy. So, can you
Yes.
just start by telling us why interior design is so much deeper for you than just creating beautiful rooms?
Yeah. So I think that is such a common misconception that people think, oh, design, like you're picking pillows and it's cute and it's this surface level thing. And I think it's just so undersold the true power of it. Obviously, this is my passion, this is my business. I care a lot about this, I think a lot about it, but I just think great design is such a power move. It's such a strategy in a million different ways, whether it's, a spec home where I am designing for a builder to sell it on the back end and there's like business decisions and ROI included. I feel like design is a competitive advantage there. Or it's just in your personal home where your surroundings impact you greatly. And, I'm a big believer in that, like having stuff on your walls, having rooms that feel like you and the person that you're aspiring to be, like helps call you to that person more quickly. So I think it's really important and people just don't think about it in that light a lot of time.
I like what you said there about who we aspire to be. I want to go into detail on all of this. And, you mentioned like having stuff on our walls. Like, I want to talk about scientifically how this works and how it actually impacts us. But this reminds me, so we both know amazing wardrobe stylist Shelley Carlson.
Yes, yes.
She's incredible, and she was a guest on this show. If you have not listened to episode 13 yet, go back and listen to it. She's amazing. And that was, a different perspective all about personal style, but she talked a lot about kind of dressing for the person we want to become, dressing for the version that's like, 5 years from now, who do we aspire to be? And watching all of your content, Jamie, I've started to feel like, wait, maybe interiors are sort of the same thing. So can you connect that
Yes.
for us?
Yeah, 1,000%. I follow and know Shelly as well. And I feel like, oh my gosh, we're talking about the same thing. We've got the same value. Hers is style, mine is interiors, but it's all very related. And that's another industry that I think people think is like, oh, this silly thing. But once you understand, like, it's really not. And there's that whole concept of enclothed cognition, which, is talking about clothing, but I think it applies to interiors as well. And that's where like you basically act how you are presented. So it's like they had this study where they put people in this same coat. They told one group it was a doctor's coat. They told the other group it was a painter's coat. And it was like the people that they told it was a doctor's coat performed way better on tests than the painter's coat people. There's so much psychology behind like your aesthetics, and I think that again, people just like brush it off as this like nice to have, or like it's very surface level, or it's a facade, it's shallow. But I think there's a lot more meaning to it than people think about typically. And yeah, I feel very aligned with Shelly, and like everything she posts, everything she says, very similar, where it's like, how are you showing up in the world? How are you being perceived? People are making snap judgments for good or bad. That's how we are as humans. And the way, when you're looking at my Zoom background, if I was sitting in a white wall, like busted looking background, you would think something about me, whether that's good or bad. It's just the reality. And I think if you're presenting something to the world, but then your aesthetics are not matching that, there becomes this dissonance and like distrust.
That study sounds wild. I have not heard of that, but that makes sense to me. Why do you think that is? Like, and it's one thing, okay, clothes, but I do agree it's the same thing with our home. Like, why on a psychological level? Like, is it color? Is it clutter? Is it how comfortable things are? Like, how does that translate to our physical space and what that makes us think about ourselves?
I think it is very individual for every person what that is. Like, I know there's color psychology, I know there's all this stuff, but my whole philosophy with design, with my design firm, what I do is that it's based on your identity. And that is obviously individual to each person. So I don't think there's a blanket statement like, if you paint your house blue, you're going to be happy. Because even though there is color psychology, there's also your own personal memories and experiences with different things. If you had a teacher that you hated that wore blue all the time, like blue might not be a calming color to you because you have a different association with it because of your story, your identity. So I think it's just very individual. And those are the kind of things that I try to get at with clients. Like, what is your story? Who are you deeply, not just on the surface level, not just what color do you like, but sort of like, what are your core memories? What are these things that drive you and mean something to you? And how can we reflect that in your surroundings?
I would love to go deeper with that because sometimes I feel like this is the challenge. Like, for those of us that maybe consider ourselves a hobbyist in interior design like I do, and, I have ideas, I'm obsessed with Pinterest, I'm looking and I'm like, oh, that would be cool, that would be cool. Then sometimes you're overwhelmed, like, well, how do I make that work in my house? I don't know exactly what color to pick. Like, I love it on the internet or in an architectural digest video on YouTube, but I don't know, like, can I pull that off? Like, what's your process of helping somebody even articulate that identity so you can figure out how to put that into design choices?
Yes, great question. Also, you're great at design, by the way. I've seen many pieces in your home and they're all awesome. And I feel like very representative of you and unique. So kudos to you. What we do is, I think we have a pretty unique discovery process for our clients. We are, again, not just asking, what colors do you like? What stone do you want? Anything like that. We're really going a lot deeper and trying to get at the heart of who they are, asking things like, what is a memory from your childhood home that really stuck with you and why? And trying to like really extract these things from them that are a lot deeper than just surface level. And I think a lot of times people are not taking the time to really go internal and think about those things before they're designing. They're starting with the external. They're starting on Pinterest, which there are a million options on there. So they're looking to that. They're looking at what their friend did in their house. They're looking at Architectural Digest. They're looking externally at all these things. And that is not the right place to start. So I think like flipping the script on that, where it's like, before you do all that, you really need to take the time to slow down and turn things internal and do some work, like not to be too woo, but like really think about, what are your values? What does drive you? What are your ambitions? Like, think about those things, because you can't reflect those things if you don't know that, or you haven't taken any time to think about those things. So that's sort of what we're trying to do with the discovery process. Like, let's not start talking about tile or furniture or anything like that. Like, that is way down the line. We've got to build the foundation first, to use a house analogy. If we don't have that foundation, then the rest of your choices are just a guess. You're starting with like, and again, there are a million options for everything. It's incredibly overwhelming now with the internet and Pinterest and inspiration coming at you. Like, there's no shortage of inspiration, but I think there is a shortage of people having like self-awareness and having that North Star of what is the filter I'm running everything through.
There are so many options, and I don't think any of us are starting with that internal thing first. Like, our instinct
Right.
is just like, let's go see what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, let's go to the internet, let's try to get inspiration, and then maybe I can just kind of copy and paste that into my space or onto my walls. I've done that. Thank you for your kind words. It means a lot coming from an expert like you. I've done that, and when I have done that, that's always when I end up redoing it, which is
Yes.
infuriating
Yes.
because
You've spent money, you've
you
spent
spend money,
time,
time.
yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, we do all the stuff. We've been renovating. Our house is like 140 years old, and we've been renovating it ourselves since we bought it. And yeah, I mean, if my husband and I spend weekends doing a project and then in 6 months I'm like, bad news, I do not like it. Like, that's a freaking nightmare. But it's so,
Yes.
and then you kind of beat yourself up because you're like, "Ah, I did think about it. I waited and I really tried to like visualize the colors in the space or whatever. But maybe that piece that was missing was how that aligns with how we want to express ourselves and
Right.
like what makes us feel whatever we want to feel in that room, whether it's like we want to feel relaxed in our living room, we want to feel excited in our kitchen where we have the
Right.
parties, like maybe we didn't take the time to connect the dots with like, okay, well, what does that feeling look like for us?
Right. Absolutely. And that's what I see a lot, that it's like people are investing so much money, anything, any kind of house project is an investment, whether it's like you're DIYing it or you're building a $6 million home, like some of my clients, like it is an investment. And I think that people, just like you said, they're like terrified to make a mistake because then they finally do make a choice. It still doesn't feel quite right. And I think that's because, again, they were going based off of like Pinterest or trends or what someone else said, and they weren't doing it based off of their identity, their values, their needs, how they want to feel in their space. And so, honestly, Emily, I think about this like a lot. I feel like, number one, you and I have a lot in common, but just thinking about your business, like you would never create a brand without the strategy piece. I know that is huge for you. It's the same thing. Like, people start, they're like, let's talk about my brand colors and logo and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, that's not the first step. So it's very similar to how I think of design, where it's like, yeah, we could make something pretty, but it still might not feel right, or it still might not resonate with you if we don't have that level of basically strategy underneath of it.
So true. Yeah. It's always about like, what are we trying to achieve with these choices? It's not like, let's just pick something. And I do think that's a missing link for a lot of people. And you
Yes.
said like the internal versus external. I think that's important too, because some of these things, I think we think, okay, I've seen so and so's house, whether it's a celebrity or your best friend or your parents' house or whatever, and you kind of replicate that. And maybe there's a part of you there that it's like this external performance. And yes, other
Right.
people see our homes, like whether you host a lot or not, people come over. So there is that chance for, we kind of want to show off
Right.
what we've created or what we've invested in to other people. But the people who spend the most time in our houses are us.
Right.
So do you feel like with Instagram and all this stuff, like are people creating stuff for the outside world for posting and Zoom calls, or are people creating stuff like truly for themselves?
Yeah, I think there's a balance there because honestly, like, yes, your home is for you, but the reality is a lot of people, again, probably listening to this, clients that I work with, they do have some sort of public facing presence, where they're either hosting clients at their home, they're hosting events there, they're recording content in their home, they're doing Zoom calls or podcasts where people are seeing into their home. So there is like a public facing aspect to a lot of this as well that I think does need to be considered, because again, it's like there's a perception, you are presenting yourself a certain way, you want to consider that. But I think, yeah, first and foremost, home should be your place where you're recharging, where you're not putting on a mask and just doing things for, pretense or whatever. Like it should feel distinct to you and you need to be happy there. So I think that's like priority number one. But I absolutely believe there's a way to do that and have it, impress other people. I think honestly, like just putting intention behind your space is something that a lot of people don't do. They've got a hodgepodge of stuff from like, oh, this is from college. This is a rug from here. Like I inherited this from an old roommate, and it just was never really considered. And even if you don't have a ton of money, even if you don't have, a designer, whatever, like I just think that making a plan and being a little bit intentional can go a really long way with your space. And a lot of people just don't do that.
I wonder if that intention or lack of intention has anything to do with self-worth, which could sound a little philosophical, but when we think about this and how much we're willing to invest, again, money, time, energy, thought, whatever, in really asking ourselves these questions, being thoughtful about how the pieces in our home come together, what we're not going to allow in here anymore, those things. Do you feel like clients don't know what they want and they're coming to you because they're like, we just have no idea and we want an expert to come in and take this over? Or do you feel like people sometimes know what they want, but there's a disconnect, like they feel maybe subconsciously that they don't deserve to replace that piece with something that's a little bit better, or they don't deserve to indulge in something like interior design?
Yeah, I think there's a huge mix of what we see. Like I get clients all the time that have a very, I had someone write me a literal like design brief one time. She was a, high level Fortune 500 executive. And she's like, this is how I operate at work. Like, this is how I think about things. Here's my design brief for my home, like very specific. So, we obviously still came in, put a little bit of spin on it, like pulled it together for her, but she very much knew what she wanted. And there's other clients who are like, we don't really know. We trust you. So again, it's like I still don't want to just do something random. Like if it's their home, I still am trying to draw from their identity, their story. Like I want to know those things so that the things that are surrounding them can be impactful and meaningful to them. Like I always say, what kind of story is it to have a piece of Target art on your wall? Like someone comes in and is like, oh yeah, I bought that at Target. Cool story, bro. Like that's not cool, as opposed to having something that has meaning to you. Like this is something we got on our travels to XYZ, or this is a picture of a place that's meaningful to us because of these reasons. Like just I think about that a lot when someone's coming into your house, and just having stories to tell about the things that you're surrounding yourself with, not like I'm a generic person who buys everything from Target, because you're not, but that's not always reflected in your house. So I'm trying to help people like do better with that.
We need that help because the word generic, I'm sure most people listening to this podcast, it's like generic, kill me. Like what an
Yes.
insult. That is,
Yes.
if somebody described me as generic, that would break my heart. It's one of the meanest things you could say.
I feel like we're so aligned with that. It's like, no, we are different. God damn it. Yeah.
I know. I'm obsessed with being special.
Yes. Yes. But honestly, it's like everyone, this sounds so goofy, but everyone is special. Even if you think you're boring or generic, like you're not. You have unique experiences, a unique story, and, things that differentiate you from everyone else. Like everyone is very different. And I think a lot of what I think about as my overarching like mission in life as well is to give people that permission slip to be authentically themselves, because I think that is also a missing piece sometimes. I have always been someone who's pretty authentically myself, like for better or worse. When I was in kindergarten, I'm like telling people blunt things, like my parents are like, oh my God, Jamie. I just tell, I tell it like it is, whatever. I try to be kind, but I'm also just very straightforward. But I think people a lot of times are like, I don't want to say taken aback by that, but they just don't see that a lot. And then it makes them feel like, okay, I can also just be real and be myself. I want to give people that permission slip to be authentically themselves and then to reflect that authenticity and identity in their surroundings.
I love that permission. And on the one hand, like that comes up a lot in this show and different topics and kind of giving us permission to really express all of us. And sometimes I get frustrated. I'm like, it's 2025. How are we in a place where we need
Need
all this
permission.
permission
Right.
from people outside of ourselves to help
We
us do
don't.
that?
We don't,
We
but we do.
we don't, but we do.
Yeah.
We do. And yeah, like how much more efficient and easier and relieving it would be to not continually justify and, okay, well, thank you for suggesting this. I love it, but I have one thought about like, oh my gosh, can we just say, this isn't me?
Right.
Here's why. This
Right.
is what I'm looking for instead on
Yes.
a million topics, whether it's somebody who is helping us with interior design or our therapist, or, it doesn't matter, or a personal trainer. I don't have one of those, but I
Yes.
aspire.
Yeah.
Anybody
No.
who's supporting us in
Yes.
our life journey and creating the lifestyle and the surroundings that we want, being able to express ourselves is so key. And I think a lot of us are still building up that muscle. Like it's a little bit uncomfortable, but we want it. We want to feel like we're our whole, full self out there in the
Yeah.
world confidently and with kindness. As you said, this isn't about being brash
Yeah.
or certainly not rude, but just embodying our whole self and what that looks like to us.
Yeah. Yes, I agree 100%. Like you said, we absolutely no one needs permission for anything, but I think yeah, as we are trying to get to that point, like sometimes you do. I was thinking about I'm working with a macros coach right now and I've counted macros in the past and this current coach said something and I was like, "Wow, I feel like you just gave me such permission to, do it this way." And again, I'm a grown woman. I don't need permission to think about macros a certain way, but it's like just sometimes someone else saying it is like, okay, that's really freeing, especially when you're the expert and you're saying, because that's the other thing. I think that people are just second guessing themselves. They feel lost in whatever areas. And so then they don't have that self trust to give themselves that permission. So sometimes it can be really validating to hear it from someone else.
Let's go back to this anti cookie cutter, anti generic thing, because I think that is really connected to the self expression. I also think when it comes to interior design, it's a lot harder to pull that off. Like I have thought before, if I was willing to go into CB2 or West Elm or whatever and just buy one of the setups that they have curated by the room, I mean, they set it up that way. It would be really easy. It would be expensive, but it would be easy for me to just go do that. I refuse. I'm trying to make what you said, like you go on a trip and you get a little something, or you hang something on the wall because it's really meaningful to you. At least for me, that's taking me longer and I just
Yeah.
find it harder to put together. So how do you help clients create something that's bold and bespoke and kind of bring all that stuff together when we're not just going out and copying somebody else?
Yeah. So again, it really starts with the discovery process. It's huge for us. But I think a lot of it too is just like obviously when someone's hiring us, we're coming in there with an intentional plan. So it's a little bit easier. When you're doing your own house, it's a lot more of an evolution, I think, even in my own house. Like, and I will say, we're talking about art and original art. I have put some generic art on my wall as a placeholder and then I swap it out as I find a piece that I like, as I have budget, that kind of thing. So I don't think it's like terrible. I'm not saying don't ever put anything or wait or live with blank walls. Like, I think it is always an evolution. And even with identity, like your identity evolves, you're not the exact same person that you were. Things will shift. But I think the biggest thing is that we're going in with a plan. We're considering everything that they need, want, what works for their lifestyle, what their budget is, what their aesthetic is, all of these things. And then we're making this cohesive and intentional, personalized to them plan to pull that off. So I think it's a little different when you're doing something on your own, but I do think that people could really benefit from taking a step back instead of just like buying anything that kind of strikes your fancy willy nilly. And then you have all this stuff and you're like, this doesn't go, or I have 5 of these, but none of this. Also making a plan for yourself, where whether that's like making a board on Canva to kind of see how things flow together, making a shopping list of like, I'm looking for a piece of original art that's 16 by 20. So that when you're out and
Mm.
about, you know what you're looking for to fill those voids rather than just impulse buying things.
Let's talk about trends because I think sometimes that's where the impulse buying happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also thank you for giving us permission to maybe use placeholders sometimes. Before we hit record, I was asking you about this blank wall behind me, and I've put so much importance on this now because it's the background of
Yeah.
every podcast. It's the background of all my Zoom calls. And now I'm like, what am I going to put there? That's like the most meaningful thing in the world to me, and also aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's so much pressure. So maybe I will find something and then switch it out as that like huge
Perfect
inspiration
thing hits.
strikes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, so thank you for that. And in the meantime, like, maybe I'll end up with something that's a little bit trendy, but I feel like the world is always giving us something new. Like white marble
Yes.
kitchens were all the rage. Now they're not as popular. There's a new Pantone color every single year, and those things can vary widely. We have cottagecore, we have grand millennial. Like there's always some different aesthetic to chase. And I'm sure part of the in-depth identity connection here alleviates that, because when we understand who we are, how we function, what's going to make us feel good, we don't have to chase those things. But how do you think about trends, and what's your perspective on that?
Unshockingly, like I don't love trends, but it's a reality. Like there's things that are coming in, going out, like as a whole, just like fashion. It's like, okay, we're in bell bottoms, we're in skinny jeans, that's out, that's in. And I think the thing about trends is there's another thing that's like, I think it's called the pure exposure effect, something along those lines, where it's like the stuff that you just see more or are exposed to more, you tend to like more. So I think that a lot of people, like this goes back to Pinterest, people just copying what they see. It's like that's what they're comfortable with. That's what they've seen a lot out there. So that's what they feel like they might like, but it's not really like they just haven't been exposed to other ideas or thoughts or, again, turned internal and thought about like what they really like. They're just sort of copying. So I think there is some merit to like then when something's a trend, you see it more, maybe you get on board with it. Like, let me make a confession. And also your background is burgundy. I freaking am obsessed with burgundy right now, but I was like 2 years ago, I was not obsessed with burgundy. So I think that is a color that's for sure coming in. And, have I been duped by the trend? Maybe. Like it's gotten me. I've seen it a lot now. I love it. So, I think there is like some merit to that. But I also think, again, doing this identity work, being really self-assured with like who you are, what you like, what works for you is still the place to start. But like, of course, you can play with trends. They're fun sometimes, but I would incorporate it in things that are like a little bit lower ticket and, easier to swap out when that's not the trend anymore. It wasn't really, integral to your identity and now you want to get rid of it. So like do a pillow, do like a cheaper piece of art, do some accessories, like something, paint a room. That's easy. Like it's very easy to repaint a room. I always say, like, even with all this design stuff, like paint is still kind of my number one thing. Like it makes such an impact. So
Mhm.
do something if you really like a trend, you really want to lean into it. Like you can play with it. That's fine. But I wouldn't make it like your whole, $15,000 sectional like in burgundy if you're not sure if it's going to stick, like just do things that can come and go without financially crippling you, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's more sustainable too, which is
Yeah.
so important here. And I've learned, I think it is a mindset shift where I've really tried to feel like the older something is, the more timeless something is, even if that means it's not aligned with like the hottest thing that we're seeing the most of right now, that's actually better. Like I've been I don't want to say convincing myself, because I don't feel like I'm tricking myself. I actually believe this. But, when you go to maybe a boutique hotel, or like we were in Italy this spring, and there's a ton of stuff there, places we were staying, restaurants we were going to, that's incredibly old. They're
Yeah.
very clearly not redecorating it every 2 years. And compared to a lot of the restaurants and spaces that I go to here in Chicago, where you can kind of tell, like, wow, okay, brass bars are the thing, dusky blue walls are the thing. It's like kind of this repetitive feel.
Yeah.
When you go to other places where they're not spending money like that and, constantly redoing it, there is something that's much richer and more inviting and just more interesting about things that have stood the test of time. So I'm always trying to convince myself, like, no, the longer you've had this little picture frame or this lamp that I inherited, like if I still genuinely love it and it feels
Yes.
aligned with my style,
Yes.
it's cooler for me to keep it than to be like, well, this lamp is 10 years old. Maybe I should replace it. Like,
Yeah.
for what?
No, I agree 100%, especially if you like it. And I think there's such merit in stuff having like a soul and a story. And even in homes, like I love putting vintage in houses. And I think a lot of times when people hear vintage, it's like they're thinking about really antique looking stuff. And I'm like, no, like that's not my vibe, the vibe of my design firm. But stuff like really cool 70s mid-century, chairs that we reupholster, that kind of
Mhm.
vintage art, vintage objects. Like I love that. And it really does just change the way a space feels. And it gives it that like a little bit of grit, a little bit of patina, a little bit of soul. And I really think every space needs something like that. It also adds a unique factor. Like everyone and their mother can't just go buy my vintage Burlwood credenza that I have out there. Like, and I love that. Again,
Yeah.
being differentiated is important to me. So I just think it's cool. Like, and it's often cheaper also than brand new furniture. I don't know if you've bought furniture lately. It is expensive, no matter where you're buying it from. It's pricey, but I think getting vintage stuff can often be like a really great bang for your buck. It's really well made. It's unique. It adds soul. Like I love it.
Where do you find things for people listening and they're like, oh, I would love to have a really cool vintage piece or to inject some soul? Where do
Yeah.
you suggest people go?
So it depends where you live. There's a variety of options, but like if you have somewhere that has flea markets or vintage stores, that's where my credenza that I love, I'm like, that's the thing I would carry out in a fire from my house on my back. I got that from a vintage store that's like an hour and a half from me in Florida. There's places with much better vintage selection. I follow an editor in New York who's like somewhere amazing every weekend buying amazing things. So places like that, I think Etsy actually has a lot of good vintage that I've gotten in projects. eBay, even I've gotten some things from, like as far as accessories and that kind of thing. There's also like First Dibs and Cherish, which a lot of times those pieces are a little bit pricier, but it just depends. You can filter, you can look for stuff. Sometimes it's shipping from overseas, so that adds, a lot of cost, but you can find some treasures for sure. I have found an amazing like vintage dresser on Craigslist. So it's just
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
like I love the thrill of the hunt as well. There's nothing I love more than finding a really cool, weird, unique piece that has a story to it and, that I also paid like $20 for. So that makes me really happy. Those are some of the places that I look for things.
Okay, that's really helpful, especially like those websites that we can all access. I don't know if this applies to everybody, but I just want to encourage garage sale shopping.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I love going to garage sales. It's a thing in our family. I just went to Ohio a couple weeks ago to go like for this big neighborhood garage sale with my
Oh
mom
my
and my
gosh.
brother. And it is amazing. It's like being on eBay, but in real life. And of
Yes.
course, there are some garage sales that are absolute misses, but you can find
Yeah.
some insane stuff.
Yes. Agree. That was my other thing. Estate sales. Like, because
Mm.
I find, at least in our area, there's like garage sales, which are pretty dicey, but then estate sales, they are still hit or miss, but I've gotten some really great gems from estate sales. So that's another thing to check out.
This makes me want to go shopping.
Yeah, me
Yay.
too.
Okay, so yes, I love the interest that these secondhand pieces can bring us, and they're one of a kind. They're less expensive. It's fun if you enjoy the hunt for those things. So there's so much upside there. I also think, like you said, the word soul, which I really like, and I think about homes that feel like real life lived in. And again, if you're a person who watches Architectural Digest or home influencers on your Instagram or whatever, you know how they have like the little cake stand of pastries on the kitchen and there's
Yeah.
not like a single thing out, which I respect for their major moment video shoot, but that's not real life. And
No.
most of us listening, we don't have to consider kids' toys or kids' snacks or things like that in our design aesthetic, which I know can be a challenge for some of my friends. That comes up a lot. But we do have people over. Sometimes we have kids over. Sometimes you're the one, in my case, that spills stuff all over your
Yeah.
couch. So,
Yes.
how do we think about design that we're really proud of and it looks super cool or sleek or whatever is meaningful to us, but keep it like like not get into the thing of perfectionism, like keep it
Yeah.
livable and real life.
Yeah. So I think there's a balance. And I always say this, like, no matter what your circumstances, no matter if you're, an empty nester that's older, a child free person, whatever, like, I still don't want to give you stuff that's precious, because everyone, again, everyone has life, everyone has people over, everyone's got a glass of red wine on their couch. Like, no matter
Mm-hmm.
who you are, you're still living life, I would hope, in your home. So I still avoid rugs that are like silk or viscose, like these materials that if you get a drop of water on them, they're done. Like that just seems goofy to me. I don't design that way. So no matter who you are, I'm always thinking about that kind of like durability, cleanability type of deal using performance fabrics on upholstery because again, people spill, and I feel like I hear that all the time, even from clients with kids. It's like, oh yeah, it wasn't our kids. It was my husband spilled his freaking coffee all over the couch. Like I can't even blame them. So I keep those things in mind. I am a huge proponent of natural stone as far as countertops. So that divides a lot of people. I say you kind of have to have the personality for natural stone because it won't stay perfect. It can etch, it can chip, like all these things. But to me, I love that. I think it again tells a story, and then even if you don't love it, it's like the beauty. I just cannot get over when we install these natural stone slabs. I'm like, this is a freaking work of art. I cannot believe this came from the earth. Like it gives like it has this vibration to it that like quartz just does not have, or porcelain. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
a huge, huge proponent of it. But again, some people like just know yourself. Again, be self-aware. Some people could not deal with that. They're too type A, they're too like perfectionist. They want it to look exactly how it looked the day it was installed forever. Like natural stone's probably not a choice for you then in your lifestyle, and you might not be my client. That's fine. But I think it's just considering all of those things, considering your lifestyle. But again, I am always leaning toward like durability and cleanability, no matter who you are. I just want you to be able to live your life in your house and not feel like, don't touch that, don't sit there. Like that's not fun. That's not comforting for anyone. Stressful for you, stressful for visitors. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
ever want that.
Nobody wants to go hang out in those houses either. Let's
No,
be
where
honest.
there's like a plastic slipcover on the couch and you're like,
Yeah,
yeah.
if I'm afraid to eat a chip or like
Yeah.
keep my cute party shoes on or something, like then I'm just like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, I'm probably not cut out for this place. Like I'm
Yes.
gonna break it.
Yeah. Not a good match. So yeah, we always try to keep it like livable, comfortable. And again, every designer is different. Like I
Hmm.
am not a formal person, so I don't design that way. And again, I'm designing for the client, but there's for sure a range of like aesthetics and personalities that are a good fit for our firm or are
Hmm.
not. So I think that's one of the things. Like there are certainly design firms that will put silk rugs everywhere and like very fancy things that are more precious, but that's just not me. That's not what I believe in. That's not what my clients believe in. So I think it's a very like self-selecting process. I put these things out there to the world. People know if they want fancy and formal, like talk to someone else. There's a million designers out there.
That's the right way to be. That's a signal of you knowing yourself as a designer. And I mean, we know in the world of business, it always fails to try to be all things to all people. So I
Yes.
like that you have that focus, and it's easier for the right clients to be like, whoa, okay, I want to work with that person. I can tell you're going to understand me and my anti cookie cutter affinities. So
Yes.
no, I
Yeah.
think that's a really great thing. And you said the word vibration when you were talking about natural stone. And I want to talk more about this, like the materials themselves. Yes, there's the way that they look, but I haven't thought about this until you said it. Like what difference does it make, the actual stuff that you're bringing in, not just for the look, but for what it's made of?
I mean, I think it makes a huge difference in a variety of, areas. So there's like how things feel. They call it like the hand of a fabric, and that makes a big difference. Like, is something scratchy? Is something like very soft? Is something feel synthetic or not? I actually just saw something on Instagram the other day that was talking about fabric and how like these natural fabrics, linen, wool, whatever, they do have an actual like vibration. I don't know what to call it. It was like 3,500 HZ is wool versus like,
Like a frequency?
yes, like a frequency. So thank you. And then it's like polyester 0. Like, so there is some actual, again, I'm not an expert on that. I saw it on Instagram, must be true. But I think there is actual merit to that where it's like things that are real, like same with the stone. I just feel like it adds something. Like it is different. You can feel it. I might not be able to, eloquently express it right now, but like you can feel it in the space, whether something is a like real natural, authentic thing or it's a reproduction. It just feels soulless. Everyone's always browsing Zillow and Realtor and stuff. And it's like, I see so many houses that I feel like I'm going to make a Harry Potter reference. Like a Dementor came and literally like sucked the
Yeah.
life out of it. Like the floor is gray plastic, the walls are all wet. It's like, oh my gosh, like what is going on here? And it just feels soulless. So I really do think that there is this like vibration, whether that's woo or it's scientific, like it feels different, and I think that people, it's one of those things where they might not be able to put a finger on it, but like when you're in the space, you really can feel the difference.
I think you're helping us. Like that is articulate because what you just said at the end there is right. Like it's that it factor, when you go into a room and yeah, like a showroom or if you go to an open house and they've clearly like staged it a certain way.
Yeah.
Yes, it looks great in photos, but whatever that feeling is that's keeping us from just buying the setup at West Elm, it's like there is no soul, there's no depth. And maybe us as laymen's don't know how to say that or get help with that. But I think it's the materials, like it's the combination of the stories, the way things feel, the way they combine together, like all of that is what makes it work or makes it fall flat. That's how it
Yes.
seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like a lot of layering and layering in multiple ways. Material layering, yes, but also like style layering. I always say too, with going back to people's style, like I don't, number one, people don't understand what style terms mean. So I hate even talking about it. Like I say modern, that means one thing in my head. It means a million things to every different person listening to this. But I think when you're looking to yourself, like I want to know, what is Emily style? Because Emily's style is not just modern or it's not just traditional or just mid-century. It's like this lovely combination of a bunch of things. And I think that's what makes it interesting and that's what makes it personal to you. If something is all exactly one style, it feels very like weird and one note and like you're in a theme. It's like a costume.
Uh-huh.
Like you've gone
Uh,
too far. I think a lot about like tension and contrast and, weirdness in my designs where I'm like, I don't want everything to feel like it's from the exact same style. Like I want to
uh-huh.
mix in, if we're doing something like really modern, mix in a vintage piece there. Like if we're doing something that's really mid-century, like have a cool, more modern light fixture, like just switching it up to make it feel like varied and unique and not all one note.
I love that. If I'm like summarizing in my head and if somebody listening is like, okay, how can this help me make choices? It's like you want multiple styles. You don't want it to look like it's all from the same store and you don't want it to look like it's all from the same time. Like even if you
Right.
love mid-century, it's not like just go to like a 1970s magazine and then go
Right.
copy everything in that. That would feel insane right now
Right.
in
It would feel like you're on a
2025.
movie set. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yes.
So that's what I think, it's like adding in those things, but not creating like a theme. Even when people like, again, obviously hate a theme room, I'm big on like, okay, let's pull something out of that that's resonating with you and do something less obvious. Like I actually have a reel about this where someone was like, if someone wanted like a circus room, I'm like, okay, I'd be thinking about like, maybe we're like the swoop of the tent and the stripes. Like maybe we do a striped ceiling. Like we don't put
Mm.
clowns and acrobats and like pictures of the circus everywhere per se. It's like, okay, we're paying homage to this. We're doing a striped ceiling. Maybe we've got like a cool artistic photo of like the back of a lion or, like something like
Mhm.
that. It's
Yeah.
just like thinking about how I can make things less obvious, but still like call back to that inspiration.
I love it. What role does AI play in all of this, if any? Because this is another thing where, we're seeing more and more, like I've seen realtors post like kind of their chat GPT process. If it's like, here's, this house that we want to show what it would look like after you did update the kitchen or whatever. And
Yeah.
I love AI for lots of reasons. I also don't like it for reasons where we lose this personalization that we keep talking about as being so critical to having interior design that works. So how do you think
Yeah.
about AI?
Yeah, so I love AI, but like you said, there's for sure like pros and cons, as with everything. But I think, we're using it a lot in our design firm for multiple things, whether that's like, helping with content, helping with marketing,
Mhm.
helping with some conceptual ideation, because there are a lot of things, people have that whole like, I can't picture it. And the things that we're trying to do are not necessarily things that I can go say, like, here it is, here's a picture of it done before. Because that's the whole point. I'm trying to do something that you haven't just seen before 1,000 times on Pinterest. So AI image generation could be really useful for that, to give someone some sort of sense of what I'm talking about when I'm
Mhm.
proposing this, off the wall idea that they have not seen before. But I do think it's a balance. I think designers that feel like, oh, AI is going to come put me out of business, like they do not understand the value that they bring then, because I in no way feel like it's going to put me out of business. There are so many things that we do that really do need the human touch, especially for a full service design project. I do think AI can be really helpful in a more scalable way or a more one-off way for someone that is DIYing something to, again, visualize something, get some sort of rough concept of, okay, what would my kitchen cabinets look like if I painted them green instead of the white that they are right now? Like, I think it can be very helpful to people for that. But even for us with like rendering, we get renderings done of our projects a lot of times. And I've seen people do kind of their own renderings on AI, and they're just not as good. So, I
Of
think the
course.
technology, like they look a lot more dead to me. And we have really great renderings. Like ours look very photorealistic and wonderful. But I think it's just like that technology is not quite there up to my standard at this point. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we're using it. There's definitely some things that I'm working on to, try to help scale my creativity a little bit and help people that cannot, hire us for a full service design project, and sort of like guide them a little bit. So I've for sure been playing around over here and trying to innovate a little bit.
That's exciting. I can't wait to hear more about what you're building. That makes sense to me. Like it's a tool, which we keep hearing people say. And it's kind of like Pinterest. Like I'm sure there was some talk when Pinterest came out that, oh my gosh, it's going to put interior designers out of business. Like if
Yeah.
anything, we need them more because now we're overwhelmed
Now
with
you're
choice. And
overwhelmed. Yes.
yeah, and I think AI can be the same thing. You can really run down a path and then be like, wait a minute, where did I start? What am I trying to accomplish?
Yes.
I feel that way for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And that's sort of what I'm working on building, is geared toward that, giving you that clarity and that, upfront, like knowing your identity, doing that work a little bit so that you have this North Star that you are filtering things through. So,
That's
mhm,
exciting.
yeah.
Okay, well, between today and when that's ready for us to all go play with or try, what's a good place for people to start? If somebody listening is like, okay, I hate this room or I hate this part of my house. I've been saying I'm going to change it. Like, I really want to do something about it. Of course, we will have all of your information for those that want to work with you, which I would
Yes.
highly recommend. But for somebody who's like, I just want to do something on my own, what's the best place for people to start making change?
Okay. So I say this first again, like, before you're thinking about what color am I painting my wall, like slow down, back it up. What I would be doing now, especially if you're ever going to build a house, if you're ever going to do a big renovation, if you're ever anything, start making notes in your phone of friction points that you run into during your day in your current house. Because again, like you were saying, like people do things and then they're like, it's still not right. I'm still plugging my phone in over here and running over here. Like, crap, why didn't I think about that? I
Huh?
think before it's like go time, just start making notes of this. Like, I'm thinking about when I'm filling up juice in the morning, I have to go over here to my fridge to over here to mix it. Like, that's annoying, and it's something I do every day. So, like, just start making notes of those friction points in your everyday so that when you are going to design, you can design around those. Like, that's a lot of what we're doing, even in my office space that we're in right now. Like, I had a pull-out couch in here. We do need this to function as a guest space, but 99% of the time we don't, and it's my office. So it's like, okay, that's the problem. That's the friction point. What can we do? So we did a Murphy bed that looks really cool if you're just listening to this. It doesn't look like what you're probably thinking of. I swear it's cool. But just like thinking about that, and I'm like, I need a lot of storage for samples. Like we made these cabinets extra deep. I need like a charging thing right here. So we plan for, electricity to be coming there. Just like really considering what do you actually need out of this space and being intentional about that. And I think a good way to do that is, again, as you're going through your life day to day and you keep like stubbing your toe on that same thing, write it down so that when it does come time to make a change, you can account for that and you can change that and make your life feel smoother.
That's such good advice. I feel like patience is our biggest hurdle when it comes to some of these things. And sometimes it's like we could live with something for 5 years and hate it the whole time and not take any action. And then other times it's like then you hit that moment where you're like, enough is
I
enough.
have to do
We're
it.
redoing
Yeah.
yeah, we're
Yes.
redoing this room this weekend, but you
Yep.
haven't had the time to like thoughtfully note everything that
Yes.
you just shared. And it's
Yes.
so worth it. Like as somebody who's done it both ways, where we have really thoughtfully planned, or I believe I have, I'm always
Yeah.
like, Dave, I have an epiphany. This room should be light green.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works out, but a lot of times it doesn't, or at the very least, I think afterwards, oh, I could have done that a little bit better or more
Yeah.
efficiently, or I wish we would have moved that outlet first or whatever.
Right.
It's so worth it to just take your time, and then you won't have to spend more time later redoing it or just being annoyed that every day you're walking around the island and or whatever it is.
Yes. Yes. I think it's that whole like a theme that keeps coming up in my life is slow down to speed up. And I just feel like that really applies here where it's like, okay, it might take a little bit longer, but you'll have the actual end result that you want. And again, with home stuff, it's like the stakes are kind of high. Like it's
Uh-huh.
pricey, it's disruptive, and things snowball. Like you can't necessarily just make a small tweak after the fact, like if you didn't plan for something up front. So I think it's the same thing we do in the design firm where like we do a ton of upfront planning. We draw design documents in crazy detail where we're thinking through where's every single switch, where's every single toilet paper holder, like all of these things before ground is broken, because that's when it's easy to change. Once you get into it, you're like, things are moving fast, decisions have
Mhm.
to be made, and then it's stressful, mistakes happen, then you're not happy. So I think it really is like my core thing in design is like intention. Give it some thought, give it some intention, and you will be so much happier with the end result.
Jamie, you mentioned that you and I have a lot in common, and it's so true. And I feel that
We
even
do.
more after listening to this. And intention is so key. I've gone back and forth of having that in the messaging for this podcast because I think what we're doing by getting curious, whether that means we're living child free or not, it's so much about like the end result we're really seeking is personal fulfillment through intentional living, like
Yeah.
taking our time, doing what's right for us
Yes.
versus trying to mimic everybody else. In closing, I would love to ask you, what does a fulfilling, intentional life look like to you?
I think my biggest value is like freedom. When I think about, what do I think makes me happy? It all boils down to freedom, like the freedom to do work that I love with people that I like, to take time off when I need to live my life, all of those kind of things. So I just try to be very intentional with my life in general. Again, like you said, not just get swept up in the, okay, I'm just doing this because that's what everyone else did. Like I am thinking about everything that I am doing and like, does this align with who I am? Does this align with the life that I'm trying to build? And not just like blindly letting things happen to me, which I think it can be easy to do unless you've like snapped out of it, kind of had that real self awareness moment of like, don't just live like that just because. Like you said, with having kids, I think a lot of people are like, well, that's just what you do. You
Mhm.
go to college, you do this, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. And I'm like, please don't have kids if you don't desperately want kids. That should not be the default for sure. Like it should not. But I think people just like don't even think about it. There's not intention behind it. So yeah, for me, it's like freedom is a huge value and being intentional about how I'm building my business and my life to like reflect that.
Mm, beautiful. For everybody who wants to know you more and wants to see your amazing work and connect with you, tell the people what you have going on and the best place to find you.
Yes, I am on Instagram quite often at Studio Gaspo. And then my website is studiogaspo.com. I can also drop a little opt-in if anyone is interested in keeping up with, what I'm sneakily talking about I'm building. So you can stay in the loop with that. And that's pretty much it. I'm on Instagram stories a lot. So you'll see the space yapping if you follow me there.
Amazing. Okay. Yes, I will get that link from you and include it in the show notes because I'm sure a lot of people are curious. Thank you so much for coming, Jamie.
Yeah, this is awesome, Emily.
Thank you for listening. Now I want to hear what you learned. DM me on Instagram at Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman or leave a review with your top takeaway. These ratings really do make a difference. If you're not a member of the Curious Life Club yet, you are invited. Visit CuriousLifeOfAChildFreeWoman.com to join the conversation, share suggestions, and be first to know the next curious topic. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.